Tell me exactly where it is." Olga described the terrain around the mysterious bush and then handed the binoculars to Mark. It only took him a moment to find it. It really did look like a bush. Mark checked the rest of the hill but couldn't find anything else exactly that color. That meant either it was the only bush of that type on the hill or it was someone in a camouflage suit. He watched it for a few minutes and started to think that it really was a bush. Then he saw it move, not much, but enough. He knew that it wasn't natural. He memorized the spot where the man was and then searched for more strange bushes. He couldn't find anything else by size or color that could hide a man. He knew that there were at least 5 of them, so where were the others? He figured they probably had a camp set up at the base of the hill or somewhere that he couldn't see with all the scrubby trees and cactus in the way. He looked for any sign of smoke and listened as hard as he could. There was nothing. These guys are good, he thought. Yesterday, Mark and his team had walked past the foot of the hill on the other side. He wondered if the observers had watched them walk by. On the second loop yesterday, they were well within where the intruders had left the little to no tracks. It was just luck that they'd found any tracks today. Mark had his team follow him back the way they had come. He wanted to call Gunny and see what the security chief wanted him to do, but he wanted to make sure he was well out of earshot of the intruders. Since they weren't looking for tracks, it only took a few minutes to make their way back to the first footprints they found. He set up the radio and made his call. It took this command post a few minutes to go get Gunny. Finally, the crusty voice came over the radio. "What's your problem, Scout 1? He sounded slightly out of breath. "We found 5 sets of tracks leading toward your position, command post. We followed them and tracked them a ways. We lost the tracks but spotted one of them on the hill about 1,000 yards southeast of the eastern fence line. He's camouflaged really well, and it looks like he's observing the subdivision. I think the others have a camp out of sight like we did at our OPs. Do you want us to see if we can find it?" "No, it's too dangerous." "He just doesn't think we can handle it," Susan spat angrily. Mark showed her his best "shut up" look. "Roger that, CP," he answered. "What's your position right now?" Gunny asked. "We're about half a mile south of the hill, back where we found the tracks." "Okay, Scout 1. You've got a little over an hour before sunset. Why don't you track backwards a ways and see if you can find where they came from? I'm going to stay here in case you find something." 10-4, command post, Scout 1 out. Mark turned off the radio. "You heard the man. Let's see where these tracks come from." The 5 women fell into ranger file behind Mark. He had little problem following the trail the intruders had left. Mark wondered who they could be. They'd become careful as they got close to Silver Hills, but they must not have expected anyone to find their trail this far from their observation post. They expected anyone to find They came to a fence and crossed it into a very large grass field that had been cleared of all but the largest trees. The grass looked like it had been recently cut and probably baled for hay. There were enough bare spots to see footprints every few yards. Mark found a small rock that had been kicked over. He knelt down and touched it. The bottom, which had been in the ground before someone kicked it over, was still slightly damp. Mark figured it had been turned over today or last night at the earliest. He was still kneeling and examining it when something whacked the ground about 6 feet away from him. It sounded like a big nut or something had fallen out of the tree he was under. Mark looked and saw that whatever it was had made the ground erupt like a small explosion. He was confused. A split second later, he heard the crack of a gunshot and knew what had hit the ground. He jumped behind the massive trunk of the tree and saw his team scrambling for cover.